Hello, my name is Teresa Wace, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in San Carlos, California. This video is a synopsis of a recent parent support group that we held in the San Carlos School District. Let me share my screen with you. Setting limits and holding boundaries. One of the metaphors that I love when it comes to limits and boundaries with our children is the guardrail. That rail is a thing that keeps our children on the road as they meander along in life. And oftentimes, our children bounce up against that guardrail. When they bounce up against the guardrail, fights, disagreements, mistakes, our children learn from our reactions and how we respond. The developed brain, the developing immature brain, in order for this brain to mature, it has to borrow off a mature brain. That's the guardrail. Fights, having to hold boundaries, they're opportunities to teach your kids. I love photos when it comes to the guardrail because the reality is when a child crashes up against the guardrail, sometimes it gets flexed and shaped into something new. That's a growth mindset at work. Sometimes the guardrail gets broken and needs to be fixed and repaired. And as you can see by these bottom pictures, is there are times when that guardrail is the only thing holding your child on the road. Boundaries and limits are that important. Boundaries and limits help children feel safe. They act up less when they feel safe. How do they help them feel safe? Think about it. Mature brain, developing brain. When a child knows that your mature brain is there to help them, just in daily interactions, etc., that makes them feel safe. It also helps them learn to work within a social structure. Boundaries and limits. As you're growing up, you get really good at respecting boundaries and limits of social structures. Let me give you an example of that. Showing up to school eventually teaches them to show up to work, that if you don't show up to work, you get fired. Poor boundaries and limits. Extreme example, but it's effective. It helps us understand. Boundaries and limits help our children learn to respect interpersonal rights of others. Once we learn to respect them with inside of our family, respect our parents, and they'll respect ours. They also help children learn to delay gratification, put aside some things we really want to do in order to get things done so that we can have those things that we want to do. For example, like if you don't go to work, you don't get a paycheck. You can't afford little things in life. And as I mentioned earlier, mature brain, immature brain, boundaries and limits help our children's brains develop better. One of the most important things as a parent is to know your bottom lines. What really kind of sets you off when it comes to boundary violations? I recommend this exercise in order to get clear on what boundaries are. The exercise is essentially, before you can be clear on boundaries and limits, you have to be clear on what's expected of people in your household. For example, I like to take a piece of paper and put it in 3 columns. Column 1 is what's yours by birthright? What does your child get from you? Like provide a safe home, provide food, provide opportunities, create learning environments, help with homework, teach by example, teach a child self-care. What are your child's? Things like go to school, chores, take opportunities, learn, do homework, learn by our examples that we set for you and take care of yourself. And then the extras in the household. The extras are things like computer use that's outside of school usage, texting friends, and non-pragmatic items like cool clothes that make your child feel good, treat food that are great for holidays and fun events, vacations, toys, play activities. If we know these things, we can set limits like, hey, until you get what's expected of you done, you can't have the extras or the privileges. You need to do that. Back to the go to work, get your things done, you get a paycheck. If you don't get a paycheck, you can't afford the extras. We want to teach them that early on in life, helps them out when they're adults. When you do an exercise like this, what you set need to be value based, based on the values that you have or the vision you have for your family. One of the important things when it comes to boundaries and limits is to get a child's buy-in, to get them to cooperate. We have to foster motivation in order to do that. And remember this, when it comes to buy-in, humans thrive when we feel like we are acting of our own volition. How do we foster motivation? Here's some ideas. First, listen to your child's feelings. When they have to do something they don't like, to be able to share in a safe environment, usually it gets out, they go get it done. They're heard, they're validated as a human being. They tend to be more motivated in an environment where this is the case. Help them see their patterns of behavior. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say your child's been putting their homework in their backpack, but it's not getting turned in. You can say something to them like, hey, I noticed that the homework gets into your backpack. Good job, but it's not getting turned in. I wonder if we can do a thought experiment on some ideas to get you to turn that in. There seems to be quite a pattern going on, and it's causing problems for you. We also want to help children understand why they don't feel motivated when they don't feel motivated. Usually a conversation helps with that. And it's done in a tone of voice, like I mentioned earlier about the homework in the backpack. It doesn't work as well when we bark commands, when we get really upset, when we get shameful or judging of our children. Nobody works well in those environments. And let's look at an environment where self-motivation happens. This is the work of Deborah Stipek at Stanford. So here's some ingredients for you. Children are self-motivated most when they feel confident about something. They're most self-motivated when they have some choice and control, and when they believe that intelligence isn't fixed at birth, that things are neuroplastic in our brains, that we're not just that stupid little kid. We help them with those ideas. When children feel loved and respected by their parents' behaviors, they tend to be more motivated to get things done. Good to know when you're setting boundaries and limits. Now, this is probably the most important ingredient that I can share with you. I'm a parent myself. I've had my issues with it. I haven't done everything perfectly, but I've learned a lot along the way, and so have my kids. When you are role modeling boundaries and limits to your kids, that helps them out the most. Let me give you an example. When it's time to get off the computer at night, are you good at getting off the computer? When your child asks for help and comes up to you, can you put down the phone and make eye contact with your kid? Can you make your child a priority? When you guys are playing games, can you stop and get dinner ready or get things done that you're supposed to? We don't need perfection on this. Perfection hurts kids. It's good enough that your kids need to see. When you're outside in the world, riding your bike, driving your car, do you adhere to the boundaries and limits of the bigger world out there? This is how we help our kids the most, by our own behavior. I hope you learned at least one thing from our little time together. And again, this is just a little brief synopsis of a bigger topic in a parent support group we recently held. Thanks for your time.